The signal came at 0327 Galactic Standard Time, a garbled, stuttering transmission crackling with static. This is Dr. Leora Cade of the Vesper 3 research colony. We have made a static containment breach. The anomaly is static. Please, for the love of static, do not come here. Then, silence. Not a flicker of response followed. No additional signals, no automated distress beacons, no further contact from the colony's 327 scientists, engineers, and security personnel. The entire outpost had gone dark, as if it had been erased from existence. For the United Earth Fleet, the decision to investigate was not optional. It was protocol. A missing colony, especially one engaged in deep space research, was a matter of interstellar security. And so, the USS Valkyrie was dispatched, a heavily armed long-range frigate equipped for rapid response missions. Aboard the USS Valkyrie, Commander Elias Voss stood in the dim glow of the briefing chamber, hands clasped behind his back as he studied the rotating holographic projection of Vesper 3. The planet was Earth-like, but harsher. A world of dense jungles, jagged mountains, and unpredictable weather systems. It had been chosen as a joint scientific research station between humanity and the Zendar, an insectoid species renowned for their expertise in planetary geology. It should have been a peaceful, if isolated, outpost. Instead, it was now a ghost world. Voss's steel-gray eyes scanned the data scrolling along the display. He had been in command long enough to know that colonies could fail for any number of reasons. Infrastructure collapse, environmental disasters, even civil unrest, but those left behind signs, wreckage, corpses, something. But here, there was nothing. A slight movement in the room pulled him from his thoughts. Around the table, his rescue team stood at attention, waiting for orders. Lieutenant Aaron Holt, his second-in-command, was a seasoned tactical officer with the posture of a man who trusted his rifle more than diplomacy. He had been scanning the last transmission over and over, jaw tightening with every replay. Dr. Marin Alara, a xenobiologist, adjusted her holotablet with a frown. She had worked with the Zendar before, and knew more about their research projects than most officers in the fleet, but even she seemed unsettled. Sergeant Olivia Park, their reconnaissance specialist, stood with arms folded, helmet under one arm. She was a quiet professional, one of the best in high-risk extractions. If anyone could navigate an abandoned colony and make it out alive, it was her. Voss turned to the ship's AI Sovereign, whose voice crackled through the intercom. Commander, we are approaching Vesper 3. Scans indicate no biological signatures within the colony perimeter. However, Voss tensed. However what? There is an anomalous energy reading emanating from the primary research facility. The signature does not match any known technological or natural phenomenon. A flicker of unease passed through the room. Alara was the first to speak. Could it be a Zendar experiment? Sovereign responded instantly. Negative. The Zendar database does not contain any matching entries for this energy pattern. It is unknown. Holt exhaled through his nose. Great. Unknown energy readings, no life signs, cryptic distress calls. Nothing about this mission sounds like a good idea. Voss didn't disagree. He tapped the holotable, switching the display to the colony's layout. A sprawling complex of prefabricated structures, research labs, biodomes, and landing platforms. The facility was supposed to house over 300 people, but now it was as lifeless as the vacuum of space. We follow protocol, Voss said at last. Standard search and rescue formation. Primary objective is to locate survivors. Secondary objective is to recover logs and mission records. Holt smirked dryly. And the tertiary objective? Figure out what the hell happened? Voss didn't answer. Because the truth was, he already had a feeling he wouldn't like the answer. Planetfall. The USS Valkyrie's hangar bay thrummed with energy as the rescue team boarded Shuttle 2, their designated landing craft. The ship's reinforced hull was designed for harsh environments, its engines humming with restrained power as it detached from the Valkyrie and began its descent into the planet's atmosphere. Outside, Vesper 3 loomed, its thick clouds swirling over vast stretches of unbroken wilderness. Unlike the glittering cities of Earth or the sprawling megastations of Mars, this was a world untouched, wild, raw, and unpredictable. As they descended, the first unsettling sign appeared. The colony should have been lit up, even in an emergency. Automated. Floodlights, security beacons, even emergency flares. Instead, it was bathed in darkness. The only illumination came from the shuttle's searchlights, casting long, flickering shadows across the landing zone. Holt frowned at the view. No power. That's not a good sign. No emergency beacons either, Park added. If they evacuated, they didn't leave a trace. Alara leaned forward, studying the readings on her wrist console. And the energy anomaly? Sovereign's voice crackled through the comms. Still present. Readings indicate fluctuations, almost like pulses. But there is still no indication of life within the colony. A chill settled over the team as the shuttle's landing struts extended. The moment the craft touched down, an eerie stillness engulfed them. Voss unbuckled his harness and stood. He could feel it already. Something was waiting for them out there. The bay doors hissed open, and as the team stepped out into the abandoned colony, they had the distinct, skin-prickling sensation that they were not alone. The moment the rescue team stepped onto the surface of Vesper 3, the silence wrapped around them like a shroud. There was no wind, no hum of machinery, no distant chatter of wildlife. Just the hollow sound of their boots crunching against the colony's landing pad. Even their exosuits, designed to filter environmental noise, reported nothing, as if the very atmosphere had been muted. Commander Elias Voss scanned the surrounding structures, his grip tightening on his sidearm. The colony was vast, a sprawling network of interconnected prefab buildings reinforced against Vesper 3's unpredictable weather. Towering biodomes loomed in the distance, once used to cultivate alien flora for research. The central hub, a tall command tower that should have been lit with emergency beacons, stood in absolute darkness. Voss tapped his helmet's interface. Sovereign, confirm environmental conditions. The AI's voice crackled through the team's comms. Atmospheric composition remains stable. Oxygen levels within acceptable ranges. No airborne contaminants detected. However, Voss frowned. However what? There is an electromagnetic disturbance localized around the colony. It is interfering with radio transmissions beyond a 1-kilometer radius. Long-range communication with the Valkyrie will be impossible. A heavy pause settled over the team. That's not a natural phenomenon, Dr. Marin Alara murmured, adjusting her visor. The xenobiologist's dark eyes flickered across the abandoned structures, scanning for any sign of movement. If this was a storm or a planetary anomaly, it wouldn't be so localized. Something is actively disrupting our signals. Lieutenant Aaron Holt cursed under his breath. So we're cut off. No way to call for evac if things go sideways. Then, we don't let them go sideways, Voss said firmly. He motioned forward. Stay sharp. We move in. The team advanced cautiously, weapons at the ready. Their exosuits' built-in motion trackers remained silent, detecting no signs of movement. But that didn't mean they were alone. The Ghost Colony, the main thoroughfare leading into the colony, should have been bustling with activity. Research stations like this operated on strict schedules. Scientists moving between labs, engineers maintaining equipment, security personnel running patrols. But instead, it was frozen in time. A maintenance cart sat abandoned in the middle of the road, its headlights still faintly glowing. A worker's datapad lay on the ground, screen flickering, displaying half-written notes that ended abruptly mid-sentence. A meal tray had been knocked over near the entrance of the rec hall. Food still on the plate, untouched, as if someone had stood up and walked away without finishing their last bite. The unsettling details piled up. A child's toy rested against a supply crate, its owner nowhere in sight. A lab door stood open, inside a half-filled test tube still clamped in its holder. A security station had a cup of coffee on the console, gone cold, untouched. And yet, there were no bodies, no signs of a struggle. It was as if every single colonist had simply vanished into thin air. Park knelt beside a discarded helmet, its visor cracked. She ran a gloved hand over the surface, brow furrowing. No blood, no impact damage, just left behind. Voss exhaled slowly. This wasn't an evacuation. It was something else. Something worse. Alara stepped toward the research facility, her gaze drawn to the faint glow emanating from within. It was the only source of light in the entire colony. The energy anomaly is strongest here, she noted. If we're going to find answers, it'll be inside. Voss nodded. Then that's where we go. They moved toward the entrance. As they crossed the threshold, the doors slid open on their own. Not unresponsive like a power failure, but as if they had been expecting them. Holt tightened his grip on his rifle. That's not creepy at all. Inside the facility, the moment they entered, the temperature dropped sharply. Their suit sensors immediately registered the change, a full 15-degree drop, well below what the colony's climate controls should allow. Condensation formed on the metal walls, running in strange, unnatural patterns, almost like veins. Flickering overhead lights bathed the hallways in a sickly, intermittent glow. Every now and then, a bulb would pop and fizzle, sparks raining down onto the floor. The smell of ozone and something faintly organic lingered in the air, though no one could quite place it. And then came the whispering. At first it was subtle. A distant murmur, just beyond the range of hearing. A trick of the mind, maybe. But the longer they walked, the more pronounced it became. Words almost recognizable but just out of reach, threading through the air like ghostly tendrils. Alara stiffened. "Tell me you all heard that." "I heard it," Park muttered, eyes scanning the darkened corridor. "I just don't like it." "Could be the electromagnetic interference," Holt suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "Playing tricks on our audio feeds." No one responded. They moved deeper into the research complex, stepping through lab after lab, all of them abandoned in mid-use. Monitors displayed lines of corrupted code, test tubes and chemical samples sat half-mixed, as if whatever had happened came without warning. Then they reached the observation chamber, and that was where they found the first real clue. The warning. Single terminal still flickered with life, displaying a final recorded transmission. The timestamp marked it as exactly 32 hours ago, just before the colony went silent. It was Dr. Leora Cade. Her face was pale, streaked with sweat, eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. Behind her, alarms blared, flashing red against the walls of her lab. She spoke in a hurried whisper, her voice cracking. "If anyone finds this—" She paused, glancing behind her as if she heard something. Then she leaned in closer, eyes desperate. "Do not engage with the anomaly. It is not an object. It is not a machine. It is—" A loud crash sounded off screen. Cade jerked violently, eyes darting toward the source of the noise. She went rigid, her next words were barely audible. "It's aware." The screen glitched. The feed cut to static. And then, the motion sensors in the lab pinged, detecting movement. The team was not alone. The room was deathly silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the terminal, its screen still flickering with static from Dr. Cade's final transmission. The words, "It's aware," hung in the air like a ghostly echo, chilling the team more than any anomaly ever could. Then the motion sensor pinged again. A slow, deliberate pulse. Not random interference. Something was here. Voss raised his fist, a silent signal for the team to halt. Every muscle in his body tensed as he scanned the dimly lit lab. Shadows danced along the cold metal walls, distorted by the flickering red emergency lights. His visor displayed no life signs, but that meant nothing. Holt tightened his grip on his rifle, the barrel following his gaze as he swept the room. "We're getting out of here, right?" His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. Alara took a hesitant step toward the terminal, as if drawn by the frozen image of Dr. Cade's terrified expression. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." Voss shot her a look. "Explain." Alara tapped the screen, her fingers trembling slightly. "This isn't just a distress call. It's a warning." She knew something. Whatever happened here, whatever they found, Cade understood it. We need to know what she was trying to tell us. Holt exhaled sharply. "And what if it kills us?" First, before anyone could answer, a new sound broke the stillness. A faint scraping noise, like metal dragging against metal. It came from the hallway they had just entered. Voss spun around, weapon raised, eyes scanning the corridor beyond. The emergency lights continued their slow, rhythmic flickering. Red. Darkness. Red. Darkness. Each time the light returned, the hallway appeared unchanged, but there was something deeply, horribly wrong about the way the shadows shifted, like something was moving between the blinks of light. Park took a step back, jaw clenched. "Commander." Voss didn't respond. He activated his suit's infrared scanner, and immediately wished he hadn't. The hallway was not empty. A shape stood just beyond the threshold of the lab, a twisted silhouette of writhing limbs and unnatural angles. It was not human, not Zendar, not anything recognizable. Its form seemed unstable, like it was struggling to maintain a physical shape, constantly flickering between states. And then, as if sensing Voss's gaze, it twisted its head toward him, a single elongated movement. Slow, deliberate. Voss's breath caught. The motion sensor pinged once more. Closer, and then the thing stepped forward. The nature of the anomaly. "Go," Voss ordered, voice low but urgent. "Now." The team backed away, keeping their weapons trained on the shifting entity in the doorway. But as the emergency lights blinked again, the figure was suddenly gone. Holt swore under his breath. "Where?" Voss didn't wait to find out. "Move!" They rushed down an adjacent corridor, weapons raised, senses on high alert. The hallways twisted in a labyrinth of dimly lit research rooms, abandoned workstations, and darkened observation decks. As they ran, Alara pulled up the colony's last recorded data logs on her wrist console. She spoke between rapid breaths. Cade's research. She wasn't just studying geological formations. There was an anomaly beneath the surface of Vesper 3, a massive energy signature buried beneath the colony. Holt risked a glance at her. And they decided to dig it up? They didn't dig, Alara corrected. They triggered something, and then it spread. Voss slowed as they reached a reinforced security door. "Spread how?" Alara's fingers danced across her hollow interface, pulling up fragmented records. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's not a biological entity. It doesn't behave like any known life form." She hesitated. "It's not just moving through space. It's moving through reality itself." Voss didn't like the sound of that. "Can it be killed?" Alara swallowed hard. "I don't think it's alive in the way we understand life." Holt ran a hand down his face. "Fantastic. Just what I wanted. A ghost that doesn't follow the rules. The lab that shouldn't exist." The security door hissed open, revealing a vast underground research chamber. Rows of computer terminals and reinforced containment units lined the walls, most of them either shattered or displaying error messages. The air here was thicker, charged with something unseen but oppressive, like the weight of a silent storm just before it broke. And at the center of the room was the source of the anomaly. A massive, suspended sphere of swirling, inky darkness hovered in midair, its surface constantly shifting, as though it were folding in and out of existence. It pulsed, a slow, deliberate rhythm, like it was breathing. The sight of it sent a primal instinct through Voss's mind, something ancient and undeniable. Every fiber of his being screamed, "This should not be here." Alara exhaled in shock. "Oh my God." Holt stepped back. "Nope. Absolutely not. That is a black hole wearing the skin of a nightmare." Alara shook her head. "It's not a singularity. It's something else." She tapped at her scanner, eyes darting across the readings. "It's bending space-time, but not like a normal gravitational anomaly. It's..." She trailed off, expression darkening. "It's aware of us." The sphere lurched. The containment units rattled violently as the anomaly pulsed again, sending waves of distortion rippling through the air. And then, for the first time, it spoke. Not in words, not in sound, but directly into their minds. "Who are you?" The sheer weight of the presence behind the words slammed into their skulls like a physical force. Voss staggered back, his vision blurring, nausea twisting in his gut. Holt gritted his teeth, gripping his head as if trying to force the voice out. Alara fell to her knees, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. "It's intelligent," she gasped. "It's trying to understand us." Park, who who had remained silent until now, raised her rifle. Her voice was cold, sharp, and unwavering. "I don't think it's just trying to understand us," she said. The others turned. Park's visor displayed something none of them had noticed yet. Behind the anomaly, deep within the shadows of the lab, stood the missing colonists. Their bodies were motionless, their eyes vacant, their forms half-phased, flickering in and out of existence. They were still alive, but they were no longer human. The anomaly pulsed again, and suddenly the colonists began to move. They weren't human anymore. The missing colonists stood at the edges of the lab, barely visible in the flickering light. Their bodies shimmered, caught in a constant state of unraveling and reforming, like images on a broken screen. Their features were distorted, elongated fingers, hollowed-out eyes, twisted expressions frozen between recognition and something wrong. Then they began to move. Not walking, gliding. Their feet never touched the ground, yet they drifted forward, with slow, unnatural grace, as if being pulled by an invisible current. Their faces remained locked in silent horror, mouths slightly open but producing no sound. The anomaly pulsed. The team's suits flared with static interference, visors glitching as the gravitational field warped the space around them. The temperature plummeted even further, frost forming in thin veins along the lab walls. Voss took a sharp step back, rifle raised. "Stay together. Do not engage unless necessary." Holt was already backing toward the exit. "Commander, I don't think we should be here when they—" One of the figures twitched violently. Its head snapped to the side with a grotesque crack. Then another, and another. Their movements became erratic, spasms that sent unnatural ripples through their half-corporeal forms. Park gritted her teeth. "I think we've already been noticed." What? Remains of Themilara's mind raced. She had seen anomalous effects on biological matter before. Mutations caused by radiation, organisms adapting to alien environments. But this was different. This wasn't transformation. This was corruption. She flicked through the colony's last recorded scans, heart pounding. It's not just altering them, it's rewriting them. Their molecular structure is constantly shifting between states. They're stuck between two realities. Voss didn't take his eyes off the advancing figures. "Can we fix it?" Alara hesitated. I don't know." A deep, resonant hum filled the air, low and suffocating. The colonists' heads snapped up in unison, their vacant eyes focusing on the team for the first time. And then, they screamed. Not with sound. Not with voices. The scream ripped through their minds, a formless, crushing wave of sheer despair and agony. It was a transmission, a raw and broken signal forced into their brains. Flashes of memories, fragmented thoughts, shattered consciousness, pain, isolation, endless, infinite unbeing. The horror of existing in a place that was and was not. Voss clutched his helmet, his vision blurring. They were trying to speak, trying to be understood, but their very existence was fractured beyond repair. Holt fell to one knee, groaning. "They're in my head! They won't stop!" Park's grip on her rifle tightened. "We need to move now!" One of the colonists lunged. It blinked forward, phasing across the distance in an instant, a twisting blur of stretched limbs and glitching flesh moving too fast for the eye to track. And then, bang! Park fired first. The bullet passed through, the colonist's shifting form, distorting it like ripples on water. For a moment, it froze mid-air, spasming, before snapping back into its twisted humanoid shape. It had felt the impact, but it wasn't dead. It tilted its head, eyes locking onto Park with something that felt like recognition. Then it screamed again. The others surged forward. A fight against the impossible. Voss made the call. "Fall back! Regroup outside!" The team broke into a sprint, weaving between shattered consoles and overturned equipment as the corrupted colonists phased in and out of existence, flickering across the lab in impossible bursts of speed. Park fired another shot, her rounds passing through the figures but slowing them down just enough. "Bullets don't work," Holt snapped, skidding around a corner. "Great, love that for us." "They're still tethered to reality," Alara shouted, typing furiously into her wrist console. "If we disrupt that connection, we might be able to sever them from the anomaly's influence." Holt glanced back. I don't suppose you have a disconnect haunted science experiment button on that thing? Alara's eyes darted across the research logs. Maybe. Voss grabbed her arm as they reached the reinforced doors. Then do it fast. Alara's fingers blurred across the controls. One of the colonists, or what was left of them, flickered just behind her. It reached out, a stretched, half-solid hand trying to grasp her shoulder. Voss turned, swinging the stock of his rifle directly through the figure's torso. For a fraction of a second, it reacted, jerking backward as if struck. Not hurt, just momentarily disconnected. Delay in its stabilization. That was it. Alara, whatever you're doing, do it now. Alara slammed a final command into the system. A colony-wide energy pulse surged through the room. The anomaly shuddered. The colonists froze mid-step, and then, one by one, their forms began to unravel. Not vanishing, unwinding, like strings being pulled from a fabric that should never have existed. They let out one final, collective wail of broken consciousness before silence. The team stood there, breathless, hearts pounding. The lab was empty. The corrupted colonists were gone. But the anomaly still remained, pulsing, watching, waiting, and then it spoke again. You cannot stop this! The temperature in the room plunged as the swirling mass of darkness expanded outward, no longer contained, no longer restricted by the now destroyed colonists. The lab began to collapse. Holt's voice was sharp. That's our cue to leave. Voss didn't argue. Move! The team bolted for the exit, barely making it out before the reinforced doors slammed shut behind them, and for the first time since they had arrived, the ground began to shake. The anomaly was no longer just inside the lab. It was spreading. The tremors deepened. A low, grinding rumble that vibrated through the colony's metal floors. Dust rained from the ceiling panels as emergency klaxons blared, their wailing alarm lost beneath the monstrous hum resonating from below. The anomaly was no longer contained. It was growing. Voss didn't need a scanner to confirm it. He could feel it. The pressure in the air had changed, an invisible weight pressing against his skull, making every thought sluggish, every breath feel heavier. The laws of physics were coming apart at the seams. The team raced down the corridor, their boots pounding against the metal as the station lurched violently beneath them. The walls twisted, shifting in ways they shouldn't. Corridors stretching, bending at impossible angles. Alara gasped as the lights overhead flickered and fragmented, splitting apart like shattered glass before reforming in jagged, erratic shapes. We need to get to the shuttle, Holt panted, gripping the rail as the floor tilted beneath them. Now! Voss pressed ahead, forcing his way through the fluctuating gravity fields. The colony's structure was malfunctioning at a fundamental level. Walls buckling and distorting like reality itself was struggling to stay coherent. But worse than the collapsing station was what was happening outside. Through the reinforced viewport ahead, the surface of Vesper 3 was changing. The surface fractures. The planet's landscape, once barren and desolate, now rippled with dark tendrils, veins of pure blackness spreading across the surface like a living infection. The rocky terrain fractured and reassembled in impossible patterns, creating twisted, Escher-like formations. It wasn't just the colony that was breaking. The planet itself was coming undone. Alara stared in horror. It's rewriting the physical structure of everything it touches. Park's hands tightened around her rifle. Define everything. Alara's voice was hollow. Everything. A sudden burst of movement outside the viewport drew their eyes. Something was shifting beneath the corrupted terrain. A shadow, massive and serpentine, writhed beneath the surface, its form indistinct, like a silhouette seen through smoke, and then it looked at them. No eyes, no discernible features, but every single one of them felt it. An overwhelming, suffocating awareness, ancient and endless, turning its gaze upon them. A voice, no, a thought, seeped into their minds. A whisper, from the void, you were never meant to see. The station convulsed violently, throwing the team against the walls. Keep moving, Voss bellowed, forcing himself forward. They were seconds away from being trapped inside this collapsing nightmare. They reached a main junction, and the floor simply stopped existing. Ahead of them, the corridor dissolved into a shifting abyss, suspended fragments of metal drifting weightlessly in the empty void where a hallway should have been. Park skidded to a stop. "You've got to be kidding me," Holt gritted his teeth. "I hate this planet, I hate this mission, and I really hate that thing." Voss scanned the space ahead. The shuttle bay was on the other side, separated by a twisting gap of broken space. No solid ground, no gravity, just raw, unstable reality. Escape through the rift. Alara checked her suit's thruster pack. Microburst propulsion should be enough to clear the gap. Park adjusted her own stabilizers. "You better be right about that." Voss didn't hesitate. "We jump on my mark. One at a time, fast as possible." The anomaly pulsed again. The walls behind them stretched and fractured, dark tendrils of unreality creeping closer. The station's very fabric was disintegrating. Voss clenched his jaw. "No more waiting. Go!" Alara jumped first. Her thrusters ignited, propelling her forward through the floating wreckage. She twisted mid-air, stabilizing herself before landing. "On the far end! Landed!" she called, voice tense. "Next!" Holt went next, firing his stabilizers, but the anomaly shifted. The gravity fluctuated mid-flight, twisting his trajectory. He spun out of control. "Damn it!" Alara lunged, grabbing his arm just as he veered off course. She yanked him in, barely managing to anchor them both against the deck. Park went next, a perfect jump. Then Voss. The moment his feet hit the other side, he turned back, just in time, to see the corridor behind them implode. The twisted void collapsed inward, consuming what remained of the station's interior. There was no time left. The shuttle bay doors were ahead. But then, they weren't. The final collapse. The anomaly surged forward, consuming space at an impossible rate, folding corridors into themselves, erasing entire sections of the colony in seconds, and the entity beneath the surface moved. It was no longer lurking. It was rising. Voss could feel it, a presence so massive, it defied comprehension. It wasn't just here, on Vesper 3. It was pressing in from somewhere else, somewhere beyond reality. Holt grabbed the shuttle bay controls. "Doors opening! Go!" The bay doors split apart, revealing the evacuation shuttle, its engines already primed. Voss shoved Alara forward. "Get in, now!" They scrambled inside, locking into their seats as the shuttle's auto-sequence engaged. Park strapped in. "Punch it!" Holt slammed the launch command. The shuttle roared to life, its thrusters kicking against the crumbling deck as the hangar began to twist and fragment around them. Voss looked out the viewport, one final glance at the planet below. The anomaly had reached critical mass. Vesper 3 was no longer a planet. It was a wound in space. The surface buckled inward, collapsing into a spiraling vortex of dark, unknowable energy. And at its center, the thing that had been watching them finally moved. "You will carry me with you." Voss's heart stopped. The shuttle's engines screamed as they blasted away, just as the planet below them was swallowed by the void. For a brief moment, there was nothing but absolute silence, and then Vesper 3 was gone. The aftermath, the shuttle rocketed away from the system, the crew silent, stunned, alive. But something was wrong. Voss could still feel it, that presence, that impossible crushing awareness. Holt turned, face pale. "Tell me I'm imagining this." Alara checked the ship's internal scans, and then she froze. "It's here." Park's breath hitched. "What do you mean it's here?" Alara slowly turned, her voice hollow. "It's inside the ship." A long, suffocating silence filled the cabin. And then, the lights flickered. The anomaly hadn't been destroyed. It had escaped with them. The cabin hummed with the steady pulse of the shuttle's life support systems, but the silence between the crew was suffocating. It was still here. Voss could feel it, not in any obvious, physical sense, but in a way that dug into his thoughts, an unbearable weight pressing against the edges of his mind. It was like standing at the edge of an abyss, knowing something vast and unfathomable was staring back. Holt's fingers hovered over the control panel, his breathing shallow and uneven. "There's gotta be a malfunction," he muttered. "Ship's systems. Maybe they're just picking up residual energy from the anomaly." Alara shook her head. No, she wasn't even looking at the instruments anymore. She was staring at the walls. And that's when Voss saw it. The metal wasn't metal anymore. It was wrong. The smooth, reinforced hull had taken on a subtle, undulating texture, like something was breathing beneath the surface. It shimmered just slightly out of sync with reality, as if it wasn't entirely bound to this dimension. A low creak echoed through the cabin. Park grabbed her rifle, eyes flicking to the vents, the corners, the shadows. "I swear to God, if something moves, I'm shooting it." Voss pressed his comms button, his voice tight. "Run a full environmental scan. I want to know exactly what we brought on board." Alara's fingers flew across the interface. The ship's AI flickered to life, a sterile digitized voice filling the cabin. "Running full spectrum analysis. Warning. Anomalous matter detected." Alara's throat tightened. "It's in the walls." Holt cursed under his breath. "How the hell is it in the walls? We're in vacuum. There's no air, no biological medium for it to spread." Alara's hands shook slightly as she pulled up the data. "It's not biological." The readout was incomprehensible. A constant shifting of unquantifiable variables, breaking every law of physics known to man. "This isn't a life form," she whispered. "It's an equation that doesn't belong in this universe." Voss's stomach twisted. "Meaning?" Alara's lips parted, but she didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because the ship whispered. A deep, almost imperceptible murmur, crawling through the walls, through the circuits, through their skulls. "You took me from my home." Voss's vision blurred for half a second, his thoughts fracturing into fragments before snapping back into place. Holt staggered, gripping his temples. "What the hell was that?" Alara's face had gone completely pale. "It's learning how to speak to us." Park was already raising her rifle. "Then tell it to shut the hell up." "You cannot kill what is not alive." The words didn't come from the comms. They breathed through the walls, the warping of reality. The temperature dropped. Condensation formed on the walls, but the droplets didn't roll downward. They hung in place, suspended as if gravity itself had forgotten them. Then, the ceiling rippled, like liquid, like something was pressing through from the other side. Shadows stretched and twisted, a figure without form, flickering between states of existence. 1 second, it was tall and skeletal, its limbs too long and jagged. The next, it was a swirling void, shifting in dimensions human eyes weren't meant to perceive. Alara's breath hitched. "It's trying to manifest." Park took a step back, gripping her rifle tighter. "I don't care what it is. Shoot it." Voss didn't argue. "Fire!" The cabin erupted in gunfire. Rounds tore through the thing, but it didn't react like a living creature. It didn't bleed. Instead, the bullets ripped through space itself, leaving behind thin hairline fractures, as if the universe had been wounded. The creature didn't move. It didn't attack. It simply watched. Holt's voice trembled. "Why isn't it doing anything?" Alara's fingers tightened around her console. "I think it already has." Voss turned toward her. "What do you mean?" Alara's hands shook as she pointed to the viewport. Voss followed her gaze, and his blood ran cold. Lost in the void outside the ship, there were no stars, no planets, no familiar constellations, only a vast, swirling abyss, stretching infinitely in all directions. The shuttle wasn't in known space anymore. They had been taken. Park swallowed hard. No, that's not possible. We were in FTL. There's no way." Holt was furiously punching commands into the navigation system. "Hyperlane calculations are showing invalid coordinates. I don't know where we are." The ship groaned, the hull twisting ever so slightly. "You are where I exist." Voss's jaw clenched. "You pulled us here. You opened the door." Alara's eyes snapped to the console. The jump. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "When we left the planet, it didn't just escape with us. It redirected the jump point. They hadn't fled Vesper 3. They had stepped straight into its domain. Park's breathing quickened. How do we get back? The thing at the center of the room tilted its shifting, impossible head. Back? The whisper coiled through their minds, sinking deep. There is no back. The ship shuddered violently. Alara's console flashed red, warnings spilling across the screen. Integrity compromised. Structural decay detected. Reality drift imminent. The anomaly was spreading. Park grabbed Voss's arm. If we don't do something right now, we're not making it out of here. Voss turned back to the entity, his mind racing. It had redirected the jump. That meant it had influence over their FTL systems. If it could manipulate their jump trajectory, could they force it to send them back? He took a slow breath. We have to make a deal. Alara's head snapped toward him. Are you insane? But Voss wasn't looking at her. He was staring straight at the thing in front of them. You brought us here, but if you could bring us here, you can send us back. The entity stretched, a long, shifting ripple through the air. And what will you offer? The walls groaned, the floor beneath them shifting like something alive. They had seconds before this thing consumed them entirely. Voss steeled himself. Take me instead. Alara's breath caught. Voss. But the entity was already moving. It had heard his offer, and it was considering it. The cabin grew impossibly still. The entity shifted, its form twisting between dimensions, flickering. Just at the edge of perception, the whispering voice, the thing that had slithered through their minds and unraveled the laws of physics, paused. Voss held his ground. Take me instead. His voice was steady, but his pulse was hammering against his ribs. Behind him, Alara took a sharp step forward, her voice ragged with disbelief. Voss, no! That's not— His hand shot up, a silent command. Stay back. Alara's mouth clamped shut, but her eyes burned with fury, panic, and something dangerously close to grief. The entity watched him, not with eyes, because it had no true form, but with something deeper, a presence that peeled him apart, layer by layer, sifting through his memories, his fears, his entire existence like an open book. The air crackled, charged with something that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. You offer yourself. The voice didn't come from the walls anymore. This time, it came from inside him. Voss swallowed. Yes. The entity coiled, stretching, unraveling, its voice a slow, slithering hum. You are not enough. The words pierced through him, colder than the void outside the ship. Voss's breath hitched. Not enough? He'd expected this thing to bargain, to make demands, to twist his offer into something darker. But the way it spoke, it wasn't dismissing him. It was measuring him, testing, weighing. A hollow, aching sensation crawled through his chest as he realized what it meant. It doesn't just want a body, it wants something deeper. Park's voice cut through the tension, sharp as a blade. What do you mean, not enough? You want to trade? Fine. But you don't get to change the deal. The entity tilted, its presence flickering between something massive and infinite, and something horrifically small, as if it was both a god and a parasite at once. One is not enough. The ship groaned, metal twisting beneath an unseen force. Something rippled through the walls. A deep, resonating pulse. Like the ship itself had become a living organism. The air tasted electric. The kind of static charge that built up before a storm split the sky in half. Alara's screen flashed violently. Red warnings screaming across the console, reality drift approaching critical stage, hull integrity failing, dimensional collapse imminent. Park's fingers tightened around her rifle. You want more? How about this? She raised her weapon, finger curling over the trigger, and everything froze. Not just the air, not just the ship. Time itself fractured. The gun was still in her hands, her expression still twisted with defiance. But she wasn't moving. None of them were. Voss could feel his own body, could sense his pulse, the slow expansion of his lungs. But he couldn't move, except for his mind. That still belonged to him, and so did the voice in his head. One life is not enough, but 3 might be. The weight of the words crushed down on him. Alara, Holt, Park, it wasn't asking for one, It was asking for all of them. Voss's chest tightened. He had been ready to offer himself, but not them. Never them. The ship groaned again, the walls shimmering between realities. The entity wasn't bluffing. If they didn't make a deal, they wouldn't just die. They would cease, not even death, just erasure. A ripple passed through the air and time lurched forward. Park stumbled, her gun jerking upward, confusion flashing across her face. What? She shook her head. What just happened? Voss didn't answer. He was still staring at the shifting void before him. His mind raced, scrambling for an alternative. There had to be a way out. Something. Anything. And then, an idea crashed through his thoughts like a meteor strike. It redirected the jump. That meant it wasn't just bound to this space. It had some connection to their technology, to their reality. What if they could trap it? His breath hitched. If it had forced open a door, there was a chance, a small, impossible chance, that they could slam it shut. But there was no margin for error. One mistake, and they would be lost forever. He turned to Alara, voice low and urgent. How much power do we have left in the jump drive? She blinked, caught off guard by the shift in tone. What? The drive. His eyes never left hers. Can we overload it? Her brows furrowed. Overload? Voss, what are you thinking? He turned back to the entity. You want 3 souls? His voice was steady, unshaken. Then you're coming with us. The entity stilled. A long, drawn-out pause. Alara froze. Holt sucked in a breath. Park's eyes widened. Wait, what the hell does that mean? Voss's fingers tightened into a fist. We lure it into the drive. His voice was quiet, urgent. And we hit the jump, not out of here, but into the nearest star. Alara's eyes widened. That's suicide. Voss's jaw clenched. Not if we jump first. It was a Hail Mary, a desperate gamble. The ship's systems were already teetering on collapse. But if they could force the entity into the drive, even for a fraction of a second, they might be able to slingshot away before it dragged them into oblivion. Holt's hands were already moving, fingers flying across the console. I can overload the core, but we'll have a window of 2 seconds max. If we miss it, he didn't have to finish the sentence. Voss turned back to the entity. Make your choice. The void hummed, shifting, and then it moved. The walls bent, space fractured, and for the first time, the thing lurched toward them. Voss's breath caught. Now! The ship screamed as the jump drive tore open. The entity plunged forward, and Voss slammed his hand against the emergency override. Blinding explosion of light, a final deafening roar, and then silence.